Hi, this is Thomas and Rob coming to you from the land of the Palawa in Lutruwita, otherwise known as Tasmania. How are you, Thomas?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Not bad. Now, our subject for today, identity politics. You want to kick
Yeah.
off?
Identity politics, and I guess really it's in our view, it's identity fraud. So it's a very complex issue. So I guess we're only going to have a typical, as we say, 20-minute chat between us two about this sort of thing and our views of current situations, mainly from our point. So what we have down here, but yeah, very complex.
Yeah, well, really, we can only sort of talk on what's actually happened here in Tasmania in the last few years, when former Premier Will Hodgman came out and said, "Okay, from now on, self-determination will determine whether you're Aboriginal or not." So we've had, I think, a threefold increase in Aboriginal numbers in the state. Absolutely impossible. There was never that many blackfellas here. We knew them all. They're all family.
Yep.
And we've got all these people coming out now saying, "Oh, we're blackfellas. We're blackfellas." No, you're not. You weren't at school. You aren't now.
Exactly. And it's been quite an issue for me. Even some of the organisations that I love to go to and take part in, including the ones that we frequent the most. There's times where I'll turn up for something and I almost don't want to be there because there's people there that, I lived in a small country town called New Norfolk, and there was really nothing there to identify us at all. We had what they used to call homework centres. So after school programs type thing, it wasn't run through the Aboriginal Centre or Carity. It was just done through the education department, but we knew the people that were there. Everyone that turned up, we knew them. And it was, there was people there I was always iffy about, but they never, when I was at school, they said they were Aboriginal. Now there's all these people that have come out of the woodwork that never had anything to do with any of that. I played sport with some of them, and they sat there and watched me fight with my own teammates after being called things like a black dog or worse, the typical stuff. You've heard far worse than that, but all that sort of stuff, and now they want to come to these events and take part. And that's one thing. And I won't go too far into it so we can discuss it. But the other thing that I don't like is they've done that, and now they want to interfere in the political side of it. And that's where it causes us issues. That's where the grief comes in for us. It's one thing to say that you're us and not, have taken part in the things that we've been through. It's another to then say that you speak for us and that you get a say in what interferes with our heritage, our culture, our language, especially, and also the benefits that we give each other. Not the benefits from the government, but the benefits that we give each other. They want in on that, and it's not right.
Well, I'm just reminded of the thing with the Crowther statue here a few weeks back.
Yep.
And one of the organisations from up north, whose name I will not mention, was actually opposed to our proposal of having it taken down. Now, firstly, they're not from fucking Hobart, so they should have no fucking say in the place. And secondly, it's absolutely mind-boggling that they could think that leaving a statue up of a grave-robbing bastard like him is acceptable. I mean, it's not acceptable in any way. And to think it was, it just goes to show that they're more in line with government ideas and backing the government for money and for more funding for various things, get more of their family, non-Aboriginal family, into jobs and driving flash cars and stuff like that. We've got a bloke up in the northwest somewhere who 2 years ago wasn't Aboriginal, but now he's out teaching in schools. How? Where did he learn anything from?
Exactly.
It's wrong. It is just totally fucking wrong. It used to be down here, the TAC was the main organisation. We handled all of the Aboriginalities, and we had times where we sent people away and said, "Look, no, sorry, you don't have enough information. Go away, get some more information along these lines and stuff like that. Come back to us, and then we're going to prove it." And they did. Other times they go away and they come back and say, "No, sorry, we've got no proof." Well, sorry, until you get that proof, we can't represent you. And it was accepted.
Yep. I've mentioned this before. I won't go right into detail because it's caused arguments a couple of times. But I had a long time away from the TAC. So you've heard me mention this before. When I moved from up north years and years ago, Dad had a trip down south here to the place across the river,
Yep.
and we were up in Penguin, and Mum had to move down here. We ended up at Greenpoint in Uncle Dougie and Auntie Susan Mansell's old house, and
Yep.
they'd moved and we were there. So the people that I spent most of my time with to start with, because I was only like 2 or 3 at this point. This is about 80, 88, 87 into 89, was Auntie Lena Newson and Auntie Ida West, because Auntie Ida West and Auntie Gurley were my grandmother's first cousin. So we came down there, and then obviously you had all your Everetts in that area there, Uncle Ben's kids, Uncle Mervin's kids, people like that. And then you had Maynards. There was a handful of Mansells as well, Smiths. All of those mob were in this area. They're the people I grew up around.
Yep.
As I got older, being stuck in New Norfolk, I had a step parent. Wasn't the nicest person when it come to respecting our culture. So the only times I could really do much was when I was either seeing my dad, which I had a long time in between seeing him too, and doing stuff with Auntie Lena. Well, Auntie Lena and Auntie Ida and that had sort of drifted away a bit from the TAC. They were doing stuff with Carity with the Women's Health Organisation at the time. So I did a lot of stuff there. I still went to TAC stuff. I still went to marches. I still did a lot of things, but I always stayed in the background. A few people, that I'd go up to and I'd talk to were the ones that were either immediate family or whatever. So I had a bit of a time away, and I got forced into having to get one of these bloody stupid Aboriginality letters. And I found it funny because I'd never been around that. I'd never needed it. I'd never relied on things that required it. So I went, oh, well, this is going to take me 5 minutes. Well, whoever was on the board at the time for the Senate just went, oh, I think Robert's only got kids to this woman. Well, they were dead wrong. Dad's got a lot of kids. And I got turned down. And I was like, well, what do? You do the right thing. You go, as you said, you get more information and you present it. I did the right thing. I called up Auntie Lena. She rang up. It was fixed in less than 2 minutes. It's not a... So when people say, oh, it's such a big deal to chase up the extra info to do these things, I almost take offense to that, because it's not hard. It's not hard to show your information. And even if you've been dealt what you might deem at the time an unfair card, you just fix it. And if it's not fixed, then it's obviously not there.
I was just thinking then when you're saying that, I was thinking about one of my brothers. I was thinking he's got children to 3 different women. Well, hang on, started counting again. No, got children to 4 different women that we know of. Yeah, he spreads himself around a bit, but yeah, it's entirely possible that one person in an organisation won't know all of that person's family. I mean, only recently I found out about a cousin's or a new cousin, a brother who or a cousin who was part of the stolen generation that I never knew about until 3 or 4 months ago, because it was never talked about in the family. Because that generation didn't talk about those sorts of things. My generation was a bit more out, a bit more open. I've almost spoken about my stolen generation daughter.
Yep.
And luckily enough, managed to get back in touch with her. This one though, he's my age, or a couple of years older, I think, and he's finally got back in touch with the family. Unfortunately, he missed the chance of meeting his mother. She died a couple of years ago. But he said, what do I do about Aboriginality and stuff like that? Well, the bloodlines are there. Come and talk to me, buddy, and I'll take them to the Aboriginal Centre. We'll explain everything, and we'll get everything done. Because he's down the centre of the state, and the rest of the family are up at the northern end of the state, of course.
Yep.
So I said to him, look, give us a ring anytime you're coming in here to town. I said, I'll race you in there, and we'll have a chat to him, and we'll try and get something organised for you. Of course, 3 or 4 months ago, I wouldn't have known him either.
Yeah.
I do now. Yeah, but it's one of those things. But now with the self-determination coming out, people can stand up and say, yeah, I'm a Tasmanian Aboriginal person and you can't do nothing about it. That's wrong, because now we're going to be stuck in a situation in a few years. The law will change and will change back again, and will have to be proven. And we're going to have all these people saying, oh, but I've been accepted as being Aboriginal for the last 10 years. Well, no, you're accepted as being Aboriginal under a different definition. The definition has now gone back to the way it was. You now have to prove it. If you can't prove it, sorry, cock, you're not.
Yep.
Every one of us who have been through the TAC, we can prove it. We have proven it in the past and can prove it again in the future. So I've got no problems with it. Absolutely no problems. I haven't even got a letter of Aboriginality. I don't need one.
Yep.
Because I've always been known, coming from Tribunna, I was always the black kid in school that's causing the trouble.
Yep.
Stacking up for himself, basically. And the family were always known as, the black blokes that you call him when there's trouble in the pubs and stuff. We couldn't get away from it. So it was never questioned with us. But if somebody was to say to me now, if I was to go to the mainland to work in an Aboriginal organisation and say, have you got a letter of Aboriginality? No, I'll go and get one back. I can get one pretty much straight away.
Exactly.
Of course, having worked on the mainland though in different Aboriginal organisations, I never needed one then either, because I've already come with a reputation from working down here at the Aboriginal Centre, working on national committees and so on, that it was never questioned. And at one stage, I actually represented the Townsville area on a Federation of Land Councils meeting. So as far as sort of Townsville and Tasmania was concerned, they didn't believe in state boundaries or anything like that. They believed in getting the right person to do the job or to speak up at the time. In that particular case, that was me that time. Because I said to them, I'm not a Queenslander. I said, no, you got Queensland kids. And you know the issues. You're as vocal as what we are, and you're well spoken, well thought. We want you to speak for us. Fine. Okay, as long as you realise that I'm not actually a Queenslander. Yep, look, we know that, Rob. Yeah, for fuck's sake, you're a Tasmanian. So, it was really good. And we do the same thing down here. We often have people come down from the mainland down here, be working with our organisations and stuff. We don't say, oh, no, he's a New South Wales man, he can't have the same what happens down here. No, you're living here in our community, you're part of our community.
Yeah, exactly.
But you really have to be part of the community. You have to be black first to be part of the community. So we have a lot of people down here who are claiming part of the community when they aren't.
Yep. No, I fully agree with that part.
Something we really have to look at doing, though, is rolling back this decree, basically, of Wills, Will Hodgman, and saying, look, no, that situation of self-identification doesn't work. Because otherwise, I'm going to identify myself as a fucking Martian and claim Mars. Why not?
Yep. Not fully agree. Yeah. So, as I was saying, with the letter, it became a legal requirement for those jobs that were coming up. Like they still come up now, but I can tell you, obviously, I'm not going to
buy them now.
Especially so in the education, government jobs, occasional private business as well. They'll advocate for Aboriginal positions or Torres Strait Islander positions. Usually, or it used to be, at least at this point, you had to have that stupid letter. I say stupid because I found it stupid at the time. I don't now, obviously. I find it to be something that should be the case every time at this point. But you had to have this letter just to apply for the position. Now you can apply for the position, you can be working the position, and sometimes they won't even chase it up. They'll just be like, oh yeah, you've identified, there you go.
If the state public service, that's all they can do. They can't ask for anything more because the state public service rules are set by the Premier. And the Premier said, no, self-identity is good enough. That's enough.
And it's gotten, it's just so ridiculous. I mean, I know people from the community, including, as you were saying about mainlanders that are a part of our community that aren't, our people, but they are Aboriginal. They've left the education department simply because they've sat there and watched what is happening. And, and it gets really annoying too, because from our end, we see it clear as day. And it's not just by the people, it's by what they're teaching. You go down there, I've got a a family member whose kid is in school at the moment, and they showed me something that a teacher had got them to paint as part of a competition, and it's supposed to be the Jordan River. There's turtles and emus and stuff, and I'm like, okay, first off, where the hell did those turtles come from? I said, secondly, there hasn't been emus here for quite a long time, and they didn't look like them ones. And then,
No.
yeah, everything else was, of course, dots and patterns and maps style from the mainland. I'm like, it's not something we did down here. And like, there's no mention of, there's nothing there even for us. There's no, like, I don't expect petroglyphs to be in everything, but I expect something from Tasmania. And the focus, when looking at it, it just looked like a copied art piece from someone from Central Desert and then a saltwater person. You know, it didn't look right. And you see it consistently.
Yeah, the dot painting, that's only really from Central Australia.
Yeah.
X-ray art is from the top end and across northern Queensland, far north Queensland, but nowhere else. Yet both those styles are considered to be Aboriginal art, and they expect Aboriginal artists to be using that sort of style of painting in Victoria and South Australia and even down here, and it doesn't. My daughter's an artist. She's an artist from North Queensland, so she does do a little bit of dot painting, but not much, because the dot painting wasn't a major part of the Kugilanji. They did a different style of art, which does. And as we know with Thelma, she doesn't do dot painting either, because it's not a Tasmanian thing. Why would you do it and pass it off as traditional? Because it's not.
Exactly.
It's traditional for Central Australian Aboriginal people, not for Tasmanians.
Yep.
Authenticity.
And it's a huge standout down here. We've seen those people that we're not going to name them because it's not worth doing, but we had those people that were consistently trying to sell the art and saying, that their excuse would always be, I have Aboriginal heritage. And then we question them on it, and they show us a piece of paper from an organization, and it doesn't substantiate doing what they're doing. And they were getting coloring in books more or less and putting dot paintings on it. And I
know the person you're talking about, from one from down south, of course.
Yeah.
And how many people jumped up and down on it and kept on jumping up and down, and she's still out there doing it and still claiming that it's authentic Aboriginal work, and it's not.
Exactly. Like, the best thing to do with those people is usually ask what the story is. That's what my friend Jimpana, that's Anangu, she'll ask people, what's the story behind it? She always gets into people about it. She's like, what's the story? What's the story behind this? What's the story behind that? Because she can look at it and see there's no story. You can look at it, it's blank.
Yeah.
Dots don't make a story. They see the intricate parts of the painting or the map or whatever it is that the person's done. If it's authentic, they can see something in it. The same as if we look at something from down here and we see a landscape of a place that we know. Like if we see the Northwest Coast or we see the Northeast or down here, we can see the landscape. We're like, right, we know that place. We know that tree. We know that animal. We know that area. We know the sky. We know that part of it. They look at that and they see the same thing. They can have a million dots on there, and it doesn't mean a damn thing if there's nothing in it.
Yeah, and if they haven't been put in the right place with the right symbols there, it's like reading a book.
Yep.
Everything's got to be laid out. All the letters got to be laid out in order for it to make sense. It's the same thing with the dot paintings. Every dot has to be put in the right place, every symbol in the right place for it to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it's just a jumble of letters. It's like putting a monkey in front of a typewriter, letting bash away for a couple of hours.
Yep. Here's your book. Read it.
Yeah. You need 10,000 monkeys and 10,000 years to reproduce works of Shakespeare.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not going to happen.
And it's one of those things that just makes this. Obviously, we won't go too far into that because that's a whole other issue there with the fraudulent artwork. But it just drags on, and it makes it even harder because then you'll get non-Aboriginal people that think they're doing the right thing by sticking up for this sort of situation, and the whole time they're like, oh well, now you just what's the crabs in a bucket? You're arguing amongst yourselves. Well, no, we're not. they're not us. We're not arguing with ourselves. We're arguing against more or less an institution that is trying to interfere. It's not us. This group is not our people. Now, obviously, we do have splinter groups amongst ourselves, but we know them as well. We know the bits and pieces that don't always mold.
And we do argue amongst ourselves, but what fucking family doesn't?
Exactly.
I mean, and we're talking about a family here in Tasmania. We've basically 3 or 4 very large families.
Yep.
All coming from pretty much the same ancestors, stuff. 3 or 4 different ancestors, common ancestors. So we're basically 3 or 4 large families and stuff. And yeah, we argue. Of course, we argue. Christ, I argue in my own family with my kids and my brothers and people like that.
Yep.
If I didn't, I wouldn't have any fun. That's me, though. But yeah, people are always going to argue, and there'll always be arguments in the Aboriginal community because not everyone is going to see eye to eye. No one does in any other part of the community either. So it's not just an Aboriginal thing. And when people bring up the idea about, oh, but you're arguing amongst yourselves, yes, so what? So what? You argue amongst yourself. We don't make a big deal out of that either.
Exactly.
Leave it at that.
And
leave it at that.
It's that little thing that they'll throw that in, and then these other groups, organizations, a lot of non-Aboriginal people, they'll jump up and they'll say, right, that's when the term lateral violence gets thrown at us. Oh, you're using lateral violence. Well, we're not, because we're not alienating each other. We're asking, you're not us. Why are you coming in trying to interfere with what means something to us? Like we want to get land back. We want places we can take children to and teach them. We want places we can go to and just walk around and just be on country without having interference from non-Aboriginal people or people that don't understand what we're there for. And it gets worse and worse and worse. But like you said, the main issue is the self-identification. The 3 points, which I haven't got in front of me, but the main, obviously recognition of yourself, recognition by your community, and proof that you are a bloody Aboriginal person by blood. It's just,
yes, exactly.
It's short. Like a lot of the time, it just can't be followed. We look at the issue with Jackie Lambie. I'm going to say her name because she's a politician. She's in the spotlight. We can do it.
And she also had a picture taken with the Aboriginal politicians at the beginning of Parliament this year, which I totally disagree with. Because
it just makes me angry. Exactly. Obviously, she had her issues with, she had her issues with all of us, but Clyde Mansell called her out and said, like, you're getting on TV, you're trying to say Manalagena and calling him Malagina or whatever the hell it is she said. And you can't substantiate yourself. And it makes me angry because my grandfather's side of the family is from that Briggs side, is from the Dalrymple Briggs side of things. And I see all these splinter families. Now, I know I shouldn't mention names, but I know particular families. I know Gowers, and I know the offshoots of that. And there's a lot of people there. I know people at Six Rivers. I'm a member of Six Rivers because of that. I wanted to know more about that side of things. I wanted to see how they do things. But there's a lot of people up there that have already been called out in the past. Some of them were a part of the lawsuit in the 90s into 2000s. And they're still floating around, and they've never once substantiated themselves. And you end up with these arguments, and then they jump on board and try to get involved in things. And it really does my head in. It makes me feel bad for, it sounds weird, like I almost feel bad for having that connection because of, obviously I've got my Everett and Brown and Maynard connection on my nan side and Beaton. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, it almost feels like it's fighting each other because some of them have accepted this other lot and they've never substantiated. Obviously, Jackie Lambie's family tree got disproved by National Archives, and it's still she's still accepted. She's on NITV.
Yeah, and she's still claiming it. I mean, again, it's a case of these people saying, Oh, but I've been in the community for 10 years. Well, you might have been hanging around the community for 10 years, but you haven't actually been a part of the community.
Yeah.
You will never be in the community. You'll just be a person who hangs around the community. And you shouldn't have a say. Every time they open their mouth, you should just turn around and say, look, shut up. You can be here as an observer, but that's it. Keep your mouth shut. Don't go giving any advice. Don't go putting your point of view across to anyone. If they don't like it, the door's there, piss off.
And there's a difference between an ally and a community member. And that's where the issue often comes in.
I mean, I might be all for one particular thing, and community members might be against me, and I will accept their point of view and listen to them. An ally, maybe not so much, because their point of view really doesn't mean anything to me. It's the community, our community, we have to worry about. What the white community or any other community thinks about us, that's their problem. Yeah, it doesn't worry me what they think, and it's not my business. But,
exactly, and it's not their part to have a say in what immediately should be coming from us. They can say we agree with you, or we're going to try and help you, like obviously with numbers for marches and stuff like that. We're going to be here for this, we're going to be there for that. Well, they can advocate in some extent, but don't throw your 2 cents in where it shouldn't be. And it seems to happen a lot as well.
Yep. Advocate by all means, be an ally and everything like that, but that's as far as you can go. Don't try and say, okay, your position should be this, your position should be this. Well, no, our position is for us to decide, not for anyone else to decide. And it goes the same with Aboriginalities. It is for us to decide, not for the government to decide or anyone else to decide. Exactly. Aboriginality should be left in the hands of the Aboriginal community, no one else.
And you'd think you'd think they would be happy with that, because it's going to benefit them as much as it is us, because our numbers are going to, well, not that we take into accord a lot of the bull crap anyway, but the numbers are going to be lower. It's going to be easier for them to manage from their point of view. It's going to be easier for us to manage because we're going to know what we're managing and who we're managing with. And it makes things just flow correctly. It's right.
Unless there's a long-term goal here to say, look, we can no longer tell who's Aboriginal and who's not in the state, so therefore we're going to treat everyone equally and not have any funding whatsoever. And that is what I think it is.
Exactly.
That is exactly what I think it is. It's a modern-day genocide, a paper genocide. We refuse to recognise.
No, fully agree.
Genocide by stealth.
And a lot of people have said this for quite a long time now, that's the whole point of it, to try and get to the point where they can sit there and point the finger at us and say that we're not different, that we're not entitled to anything, that we're this and that's it. And that's as far as it can go. And that's what they've pushed for. And you're right. The more that we allow to come in, the more people that we have no idea of their background that we let come in, the more watered down it gets, the more to that point that it gets.
Well, the thing is we, the Aboriginal community, aren't allowing these people to come in. Certain organisations are. Now, those organisations, I don't class them anymore as being Aboriginal organisations. When the majority of their membership and 90-odd% of their membership are not Aboriginal, the organisation isn't Aboriginal at all. And there's no possible way they can even claim it. So they're not Aboriginal organisations. The people on their list aren't Aboriginal. Anybody who is Aboriginal that's on there needs to come back through the recognised organisation here in the state, which is the TAC, and have an Aboriginality done there if they want to keep on with it.
Yep, and fully agree. I guess we've sort of gone on a bit of a tangent with this one, but I like it because I like the way that we've just we've spoken from the heart.
Well, yeah, as we do, mate. We're not sort of saying that we represent the TAC or anything like that. Sure, it is the main organisation here, the one we probably both have the most contact with.
Yep.
Well, in my case, probably more the health service, but again, it's part of the TAC. Being the biggest the oldest and the longest running Aboriginal organisation in the state. They are the ones that have the expertise. They are the ones that have the knowledge and know exactly who is Aboriginal. The majority, or until a couple of years ago, every Aboriginal person in the state had to go through the TAC.
Yep.
There were 14,000 of us. Since then, it's now doubled out to what, 32 or 34,000?
Yeah, it's something
Impossible.
ridiculous like that.
A couple of years. Of course, my brother's pretty good, but he's not that good.
Now, like I said, with dad had what was it, 7? So no one's out there making 50 kids. Not these days. There was a few on the islands back in the day that some cousins I won't mention, but there's a few of them. But there definitely wasn't this. There was no TV then.
Barney Brown had 29 kids and 5 wives or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, my old man, he had 8 kids. I'm the oldest of 8, so it's not bad going. Anyway, we might leave it there, Thomas, until next time.
We will.
So I think we pretty much covered that today. And as for next topic, we'll have to discuss that in the next week or two. But I wouldn't mind getting on to authentic Aboriginal art and talking about how maybe a lot of the Aboriginal art and stuff that are being sold off as being authentic art. They're coming from places overseas or being done by, like you said, people getting colouring in books and just putting dots all over them. And
I think that's a very good idea.
I think that's something we probably should talk about in a bit more detail.
Yep, sounds good to me. All right, have a good one. We'll talk soon.
No problem, Thomas. Welcome, mate.
Well, look up.